RMS Titanic. RMS Titanic was a British passenger liner operated by the White Star Line that sank in the North Atlantic Ocean in the early morning hours of the 15th of April 1912 after striking an iceberg during her first and last voyage from Southampton to New York City. Of the estimated 2,224 passengers and crew aboard, more than 1,500 died, making the sinking one of modern history's deadliest peacetime commercial marine disasters. RMS Titanic was the largest ship afloat at the time she entered service and was the second of three Olympic-class ocean liners operated by the White Star Line. She was built by the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast. Thomas Andrews, chief naval architect of the shipyard at the time, died in the disaster. Name: RMS Titanic. Owner: White Star Line. Operator: White Star Line. Port of registry: Liverpool, UK. Route: Southampton to New York City. Ordered the 17th of September 1908. Builder: Harland and Wolff, Belfast. Cost: GB £1.5 million. Launched the 31st of May 1911. Completed the 2nd of April 1912. In service the 10th to the 15th of April 1912. Out of service the 15th of April 1912. Dimension and layout. Titanic was 882 feet 9 inches 269.06 meters, long with a maximum breadth of 92 feet 6 inches 28.19 meters. Her total height, measured from the base of the keel to the top of the bridge, was 104 feet 32 meters. She measured 46,328 gross registered tons, and with a draft of 34 feet 7 inches 10.54 meters, she displaced 52,310 tons. All three of the Olympic-class ships had 10 decks, excluding the top of the officers' quarters, 8 of which were for passenger use. From top to bottom, the decks were the boat deck, on which the lifeboats were housed. It was from here during the early hours of the 15th of April 1912 that Titanic's lifeboats were lowered into the North Atlantic. The bridge and wheelhouse were at the forward end, in front of the captain's and officers' quarters. The bridge stood 8 feet (2.4 meters) above the deck, extending out to either side so that the ship could be controlled while docking. The wheelhouse stood within the bridge. The entrance to the first-class grand staircase and gymnasium were located midships along with the raised roof of the first-class lounge, while at the rear of the deck were the roof of the first-class smoke room and the relatively modest second-class entrance. The wood-covered deck was divided into 4 segregated promenades, for officers, first-class passengers, engineers, and second-class passengers respectively. Lifeboats lined the side of the deck except in the first-class area, where there was a gap so that the view would not be spoiled. A deck, also called the promenade deck, extended along the entire 546 feet (166 meters) length of the superstructure. It was reserved exclusively for first-class passengers and contained first-class cabins, the first-class lounge, smoke room, reading and writing rooms and palm court. B-deck, the bridge deck, was the top weight-bearing deck and the uppermost level of the hull. More first-class passenger accommodations were located here with 6 palatial staterooms, cabins, featuring their own private promenades. On Titanic, the a la carte restaurant and the Café Parisien provided luxury dining facilities to first-class passengers. Both were run by subcontracted chefs and their staff. All were lost in the disaster. The second-class smoking room and entrance hall were both located on this deck. The raised forecastle of the ship was forward of the bridge deck, accommodating number 1 hatch, the main hatch through to the cargo holds, numerous pieces of machinery and the anchor. Housings aft of the bridge deck was the raised poop deck, 106 feet 32 meters long, used as a promenade by third-class passengers. It was where many of Titanic's passengers and crew made their last stand as the ship sank. The forecastle and poop deck were separated from the bridge deck by well decks. Sea deck, the shelter deck, was the highest deck to run uninterrupted from stem to stern. It included both well decks. The aft one served as part of the third-class promenade. Crew cabins were housed below the forecastle and third-class public rooms were housed below the poop deck. In between were the majority of first-class cabins and the second-class library. D-deck, the saloon deck, was dominated by 3 large public rooms, the first-class reception room, the first-class dining saloon and the second-class dining saloon. An open space was provided for third-class passengers. First, second and third-class passengers had cabins on this deck, with berths for firemen located in the bow. It was the highest level reached by the ship's watertight bulkheads, though only by 8 of the 15 bulkheads. A-deck, the upper deck, was predominantly used for passenger accommodation for all 3 classes plus berths for cooks, seamen, stewards and trimmers. Along its length ran a long passageway nicknamed Scotland Road, in reference to a famous street in Liverpool. Scotland Road was used by third-class passengers and crew members. F deck, the middle deck, was the last complete deck and mainly accommodated second and third-class passengers and several departments of the crew. The third-class dining saloon was located here, as with a swimming pool, Turkish bath and kennels. G deck, the lower deck, was the lowest complete deck that carried passengers, and had the lowest potholes, just above the waterline. The squash cot was located here along with the travelling post office where letters and parcels were sorted ready for delivery when the ship docked. Food was also stored here. The deck was interrupted at several points by orlop partial decks over the boiler, engine and turbine rooms. The orlop decks and the tank top below that were on the lowest level of the ship below the waterline. The orlop decks were used as cargo spaces, while the tank top, the inner bottom of the ship's hull, provided the platform on which the ship's boilers, engines, turbines and electrical generators were housed. This area of the ship was occupied by the engine and boiler rooms, areas which passengers would have been prohibited from seeing. They were connected with higher levels of the ship by flights of stairs. Twin spiral stairways near the bow provided access up to D deck. Features: Titanic was equipped with 3 main engines, 2 reciprocating 4-cylinder, triple expansion steam engines and 1 centrally placed low-pressure Parsons turbine, each driving a propeller. The 2 reciprocating engines had a combined output of 30,000 horsepower, 22,000 kilowatts. The output of the steam turbine was 16,000 horsepower, 12,000 kilowatts. The White Star Line had used the same combination of engines on an earlier liner, the SS Laurentic, where it had been a great success. It provided a good combination of performance and speed. Reciprocating engines by themselves were not powerful enough to propel an Olympic-class liner at the desired speeds, while turbines were sufficiently powerful but caused uncomfortable vibrations, a problem that affected the all-turbine Cunard liners Lusitania and Mauretania. By combining reciprocating engines with a turbine, fuel usage could be reduced and motive power increased, while using the same amount of steam. The 2 reciprocating engines were each 63 feet, 19 meters, long and weighed 720 tons, with their bedplates contributing a further 195 tons. They were powered by steam produced in 29 boilers, 24 of which were double-ended and 5 single-ended, which contained a total of 159 furnaces. The boilers were 15 feet 9 inches, 4.80 meters, in diameter and 20 feet, 6.1 meters, long, each weighing 91.5 tons and capable of holding 48.5 tons of water. They were heated by burning coal, 6,611 tons of which could be carried in Titanic's bunkers, with a further 1,092 tons in hold 3. The furnaces required over 600 tons of coal a day to be shoveled into them by hand, requiring the services of 176 firemen working around the clock. 100 tons of ash a day had to be disposed of by ejecting it into the sea. The work was relentless, dirty and dangerous, and although firemen were paid relatively generously, there was a high suicide rate among those who worked in that capacity. Exhaust steam leaving the reciprocating engines was fed into the turbine, which was situated aft. From there it passed into a surface condenser to increase the efficiency of the turbine and so that the steam could be condensed back into water and reused. The engines were attached directly to long shafts which drove the propellers. There were 3, 1 for each engine. The outer, or wing, propellers were the largest, each carrying 3 blades of manganese bronze alloy with a total diameter of 23.5 feet, 7.2 meters. The middle propeller was slightly smaller at 17 feet, 5.2 meters in diameter, and could be stopped but not reversed. Titanic's electrical plant was capable of producing more power than an average city power station of the time. Immediately after the turbine engine were 4 400 kilowatt steam-driven electric generators, used to provide electrical power to the ship, plus 2 30 kilowatts auxiliary generators for emergency use. Their location in the stern of the ship meant they remained operational until the last few minutes before the ship sank. Titanic lacked a searchlight in accordance with the ban on the use of searchlights in the merchant navy. Technology. Compartments and funnels. The interiors of the Olympic-class ships were subdivided into 16 primary compartments divided by 15 bulkheads which extended above the waterline. 11 vertically closing watertight doors could seal off the compartments in the event of an emergency. The ship's exposed decking was made of pine and teak, while interior ceilings were covered in painted granulated cork to combat condensation. Standing above the decks were 4 funnels, each painted buff with black tops. Only 3 were functional. The last one was a dummy, installed for aesthetic purposes and also for kitchen ventilation, and 2 masts, each 155 feet, 47 meters, high, which supported derricks for working cargo. Rudder and steering engines. Titanic's rudder was so large, at 78 feet 8 inches (23.98 meters), high and 15 feet 3 inches (4.65 meters) long, weighing over 100 tons, that it required steering engines to move it. Two steam-powered steering engines were installed, though only one was used at any one time, with the other one kept in reserve. They were connected to the short tiller through stiff springs, to isolate the steering engines from any shocks in heavy seas or during fast changes of direction. As a last resort, the tiller could be moved by ropes connected to two steam capstans. The capstans were also used to raise and lower the ship's 5 anchors, one port, one starboard, one in the centerline and 2 kedging anchors. Water, ventilation and heating. The ship was equipped with her own waterworks, capable of heating and pumping water to all parts of the vessel via a complex network of pipes and valves. The main water supply was taken aboard while Titanic was in port, but in an emergency the ship could also distill fresh water from seawater, though this was not a straightforward process as the distillation plant quickly became clogged by salt deposits. A network of insulated ducts conveyed warm air, driven by electric fans, around the ship, and first-class cabins were fitted with additional electric heaters. Radio communications. Marconi Company receiving equipment for a 5 kW ocean liner station. Titanic's radio telegraph equipment, then known as wireless telegraphy, was leased to the White Star Line by the Marconi International Marine Communication Company, which also supplied 2 of its employees, Jack Phillips and Harold Bright, as operators. The service maintained a 24-hour schedule, primarily sending and receiving passenger telegrams, but also handling navigation messages including weather reports and ice warnings. The radio room was located on the boat deck, in the officers' quarters. A soundproofed, silent room, next to the operating room, housed loud equipment, including the transmitter and a motor generator used for producing alternating currents. The operators' living quarters were adjacent to the working office. The ship was equipped with a state-of-the-art 5 kW rotary spark gap transmitter, operating under the radio callsign MGY, and communication was conducted in Morse code. This transmitter was one of the first Marconi installations to use a rotary spark gap, which gave Titanic a distinctive musical tone that could be readily distinguished from other signals. The transmitter was one of the most powerful in the world, and guaranteed to broadcast over a radius of 350 miles, 563 kilometers. An elevated T antenna that spanned the length of the ship was used for transmitting and receiving. The normal operating frequency was 500 kHz, 600 meters wavelength. However, the equipment could also operate on THE, short wavelength of 1000 kHz, 300 meters wavelength that was employed by smaller vessels with shorter antennas. Passenger facilities. Further information: Grand Staircase of the RMS Titanic, First Class facilities of the RMS Titanic, and Second and Third Class facilities on the RMS Titanic. This section needs additional citations for verification. The gymnasium on the boat deck, which was equipped with the latest exercise machines. The famous Grand Staircase, which connected boat deck and A-deck. Swimming pool. The passenger facilities aboard Titanic aimed to meet the highest standards of luxury. According to Titanic's general arrangement plans, the ship could accommodate 833 first-class passengers, 614 in second class and 1006 in third class, for a total passenger capacity of 2,453. In addition, her capacity for crew members exceeded 900, as most documents of her original configuration have stated that her full carrying capacity for both passengers and crew was approximately 3,547. Her interior design was a departure from that of other passenger liners, which had typically been decorated in the rather heavy style of a manor house or an English country house. Titanic was laid out in a much lighter style similar to that of contemporary high-class hotels. The Ritz Hotel was a reference point, with first-class cabins finished in the Empire style. A variety of other decorative styles, ranging from the Renaissance to Louis XV, were used to decorate cabins and public rooms in first and second class areas of the ship. The aim was to convey an impression that the passengers were in a floating hotel rather than a ship. As one passenger recalled, on entering the ship's interior, a passenger would at once lose the feeling that we are on board ship, and seem instead to be entering the hall of some great house on shore. Among the more novel features available to first-class passengers was a 7 feet deep saltwater swimming pool, a gymnasium, a squash court, and a Turkish bath which comprised electric bath, steam room, cool room, massage room, and hot room. First-class common rooms were impressive in scope and lavishly decorated. They included a lounge in the style of the Palace of Versailles, an enormous reception room, a men's smoking room, and a reading and writing room. There was an a la carte restaurant in the style of the Ritz Hotel, which was run as a concession by the famous Italian restaurateur Gaspare Gatti. A Café Parisien decorated in the style of a French sidewalk cafe, complete with ivy-covered trellises and wicker furniture, was run as an annex to the restaurant. For an extra cost, first-class passengers could enjoy the finest French haute cuisine in the most luxurious of surroundings. There was also a veranda cafe where tea and light refreshments were served that offered grand views of the ocean. At 114 feet long by 92 feet wide, the dining saloon on D deck was the largest room afloat and could seat almost 600 passengers at a time. Third class, commonly referred to as steerage, accommodations aboard Titanic were not as luxurious as first or second class, but even so were better than on many other ships of the time. They reflected the improved standards which the White Star Line had adopted for transatlantic immigrant and lower-class travel. On most other North Atlantic passenger ships at the time, third-class accommodations consisted of little more than open dormitories in the forward end of the vessels, in which hundreds of people were confined, often without adequate food or toilet facilities. The White Star Line had long since broken that mold. As seen aboard Titanic, all White Star Line passenger ships divided their third-class accommodations into two sections, always at opposite ends of the vessel from one another. The established arrangement was that single men were quartered in the forward areas, while single women, married couples and families were quartered aft. In addition, while other ships provided only open berth sleeping arrangements, White Star Line vessels provided their third-class passengers with private, small but comfortable cabins capable of accommodating 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10 passengers. Third-class accommodations also included their own dining rooms, as well as public gathering areas including adequate open deck space, which aboard Titanic comprised the poop deck at the stern, the forward and aft well decks, and a large open space on D deck which could be used as a social hall. This was supplemented by the addition of a smoking room for men and a general room on C deck which women could use for reading and writing. Although they were not as glamorous in design as spaces seen in upper-class accommodations, they were still far above average for the period. Leisure facilities were provided for all three classes to pass the time. As well as making use of the indoor amenities such as the library, smoking rooms, and gymnasium, it was also customary for passengers to socialize on the open deck, promenading or relaxing in hired deck chairs or wooden benches. A passenger list was published before the sailing to inform the public which members of the great and good were on board, and it was not uncommon for ambitious mothers to use the list to identify rich bachelors to whom they could introduce their marriageable daughters during the voyage. One of Titanic's most distinctive features was her first-class staircase, known as the Grand Staircase or Grand Stairway. Built of solid English oak with a sweeping curve, the staircase descended through 7 decks of the ship, between the boat deck to A deck, before terminating in a simplified single flight on F deck. 66, it was capped with a dome of wrought iron and glass that admitted natural light to the stairwell. Each landing of the staircase gave access to ornate entrance halls paneled in the William and Mary style and lit by ormolu and crystal light fixtures. At the uppermost landing was a large carved wooden panel containing a clock, with figures of honor and glory crowning time, flanking the clock face. The grand staircase was destroyed during the sinking and is now just a void in the ship which modern explorers have used to access the lower decks. During the filming of James Cameron's Titanic in 1997, his replica of the grand staircase was ripped from its foundations by the force of the inrushing water on the set. It has been suggested that during the real event, the entire grand staircase was ejected upwards through the dome. Mail and cargo. Le Circassien aux Bains by Mary Joseph Blondel, the most highly valued item of cargo lost on the Titanic. This image is of a copy. Although Titanic was primarily a passenger liner, she also carried a substantial amount of cargo. Her designation as a Royal Mail ship (RMS) indicated that she carried mail under contract with the Royal Mail and also for the United States Post Office Department. For the storage of letters, parcels and specie, bullion, coins and other valuables, 26,800 cubic feet, 760 cubic meters, of space in her holds was allocated. The Sea Post Office on G deck was manned by 5 postal clerks, 3 Americans and 2 Britons, who worked 13 hours a day, 7 days a week, sorting up to 60,000 items daily. The ship's passengers brought with them a huge amount of baggage. Another 19,455 cubic feet, 550.9 cubic meters, was taken up by first and second class baggage. In addition, there was a considerable quantity of regular cargo, ranging from furniture to foodstuffs, and a 1912 Renault Type CE Coupe de Ville motor car. Despite later myths, the cargo on Titanic's maiden voyage was fairly mundane. There was no gold, exotic minerals or diamonds, and one of the more famous items lost in the shipwreck, a jeweled copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, was valued at only £405, £40,400 today. According to the claims for compensation filed with Commissioner Gilchrist, following the conclusion of the Senate inquiry, the single most highly valued item of luggage or cargo was a large neoclassical oil painting entitled Le Circassien au Bain by French artist Marie-Joseph Blondel. The painting's owner, first-class passenger Moritz Hakan Bjornstrom Stefansson, filed a claim for $100,000, $2.4 million equivalent in 2014, in compensation for the loss of the artwork. Titanic was equipped with 8 electric cranes, 4 electric winches and 3 steam winches to lift cargo and baggage in and out of the holds. It is estimated that the ship used some 415 tons of coal whilst in Southampton, simply generating steam to operate the cargo winches and provide heat and light. Lifeboats. Main article, Lifeboats of the RMS Titanic. A collapsible lifeboat with canvas sides. Like Olympic, Titanic carried a total of 20 lifeboats, 14 standard wooden Holland and Wolf lifeboats with a capacity of 65 people each and 4 Engelhardt, collapsible, wooden bottom, collapsible canvas sides, lifeboats, identified as A-D, with a capacity of 47 people each. In addition, she had 2 emergency cutters with a capacity of 40 people each. Olympic carried at least 2 collapsible boats on either side of her number 1 funnel. All of the lifeboats were stored securely on the boat deck and, except for collapsible lifeboats A and B, connected to davits by ropes. Those on the starboard side were odd-numbered 1 to 15 from bow to stern, while those on the port side were even-numbered 2 to 16 from bow to stern. Both cutters were kept swung out, hanging from the davits, ready for immediate use, while collapsible lifeboats C and D were stored on the boat deck connected to davits, immediately inboard of boats 1 and 2 respectively. A and B were stored on the roof of the officers' quarters, on either side of number 1 funnel. There were no davits to lower them and their weight would make them difficult to launch by hand. Each boat carried, among other things, food, water, blankets, and a spare life belt. Lifeline ropes on the both sides enabled them to save additional people from the water if necessary. Titanic had 16 sets of davits, each able to handle 4 lifeboats as Carlyle had planned. This gave Titanic the ability to carry up to 64 wooden lifeboats, which would have been enough for 4,000 people, considerably more than her actual capacity. However, the White Star Line decided that only 16 wooden lifeboats and 4 collapsibles would be carried, which could accommodate 1,178 people, only 1/3 of Titanic's total capacity. At the time, the Board of Trade's regulations required British vessels over 10,000 tons to only carry 16 lifeboats with a capacity of 990 occupants. Therefore, the White Star Line actually provided more lifeboat accommodation than was legally required. At the time, lifeboats were intended to ferry survivors from a sinking ship to a rescuing ship, not keep afloat the whole population or power them to shore. Had the SS Californian responded to Titanic's distress calls, the lifeboats may have been adequate to ferry the passengers to safety as planned. First and last voyage. Titanic was planned to arrive at New York on the morning of the 17th of April. After leaving Queenstown, Titanic followed the Irish coast as far as Fastnet Rock, a distance of some 55 nautical miles, 63 miles, 102 kilometers. From there she traveled 1,620 nautical miles, 1,860 miles, 3,000 kilometers, along a great circle route across the North Atlantic to reach a spot in the ocean known as the Corner, southeast of Newfoundland, where westbound steamers carried out a change of course. Titanic sailed only a few hours past the Corner on a rum line leg of 1,023 nautical miles, 1,177 miles, 1,895 kilometers, to Nantucket Shoals Light when she made her fatal contact with an iceberg. The final leg of the journey would have been 193 nautical miles, 222 miles, 357 kilometers, to Ambrose Light and finally to New York Harbor. From the 11th of April to local apparent noon the next day, Titanic covered 484 nautical miles, 557 miles, 896 kilometers. The following day, 519 nautical miles, 597 miles, 961 kilometers, and by noon on the final day of her voyage, 546 nautical miles, 628 miles, 1011 kilometers. From then until the time of her sinking, she traveled another 258 nautical miles, 297 miles, 478 kilometers, averaging about 21 knots, 24 miles per hour, 39 kilometers per hour. The weather cleared as she left Ireland under cloudy skies with a headwind. Temperatures remained fairly mild on Saturday the 13th of April, but the following day Titanic crossed a cold weather front with strong winds and waves of up to 8 feet (2.4 meters). These died down as the day progressed until, by the evening of Sunday the 14th of April, it became clear, calm and very cold. The first 3 days of the voyage from Queenstown had passed without apparent incident. A fire had begun in one of Titanic's coal bunkers approximately 10 days prior to the ship's departure, and continued to burn for several days into its voyage, but passengers were unaware of this situation. Fires occurred frequently on board steamships at the time. Due to spontaneous combustion of the coal, the fires had to be extinguished with fire hoses by moving the coal on top to another bunker and by removing the burning coal and feeding it into the furnace. The fire was finally extinguished on the 14th of April. There has been some speculation and discussion as to whether this fire and attempts to extinguish it may have made the ship more vulnerable to its fate. Titanic received a series of warnings from other ships of drifting ice in the area of the Grand Banks of Newfoundland. One of the ships to warn Titanic was the Atlantic Line's Mesaba. Nevertheless, the ship continued to steam at full speed, which was standard practice at the time. Although the ship was not trying to set a speed record, timekeeping was a priority, and under prevailing maritime practices, ships were often operated at close to full speed, with ice warnings seen as advisories and reliance placed upon lookouts in the watch on the bridge. It was generally believed that ice posed little danger to large vessels. Close calls with ice were not uncommon, and even head-on collisions had not been disastrous. In 1907, SS Kronprinz Wilhelm, a German liner, had rammed an iceberg but still had been able to complete her voyage, and Captain Smith himself had declared in 1907 that he could not imagine any condition which would cause a ship to founder. Modern shipbuilding has gone beyond that. Sinking of the RMS Titanic. At 11:40 p.m. ship's time, on the 14th of April, Lookout Frederick Fleet spotted an iceberg immediately ahead of Titanic and alerted the bridge. First Officer William Murdoch ordered the ship to be steered around the obstacle and the engines to be stopped, but it was too late. The starboard side of Titanic struck the iceberg, creating a series of holes below the waterline. The hull was not punctured by the iceberg, but rather dented such that the hull seams buckled and separated, allowing water to seep in. 5 of the ship's watertight compartments were breached. It soon became clear that the ship was doomed, as she could not survive more than 4 compartments being flooded. Titanic began sinking bow first, with water spilling from compartment to compartment as her angle in the water became steeper. Those aboard Titanic were ill-prepared for such an emergency. In accordance with accepted practices of the time, as ships were seen as largely unsinkable and lifeboats were intended to transfer passengers to nearby rescue vessels, Titanic only had enough lifeboats to carry about half of those on board. If the ship had carried her full complement of about 3,339 passengers and crew, only about a third could have been accommodated in the lifeboats. The crew had not been trained adequately in carrying out an evacuation. The officers did not know how many they could safely put aboard the lifeboats and launched many of them barely half full. Third-class passengers were largely left to fend for themselves, causing many of them to become trapped below decks as the ship filled with water. The women and children first protocol was generally followed when loading the lifeboats, and most of the male passengers and crew were left aboard. Between 2:10 a.m. and 2:15 a.m., a little over 2.5 hours after Titanic struck the iceberg, her rate of sinking suddenly increased as the boat deck dipped underwater, and the sea poured in through open hatches and grates. As her unsupported stern rose out of the water, exposing the propellers, the ship broke in 2 main pieces between the second and third funnels, due to the immense forces on the keel. With the bow underwater, and air trapped in the stern remained afloat and buoyant for a few minutes longer, rising to a nearly vertical angle with hundreds of people still clinging to it, before foundering at 2:20 a.m. For many years it was generally believed the ship sank in one piece, but when the wreck was located many years later, it was discovered that the ship had fully broken in 2. All remaining passengers and crew were immersed in lethally cold water with a temperature of 28 degrees Fahrenheit (-2 degrees Celsius). Sudden immersion into freezing water typically causes death within minutes, either from cardiac arrest, uncontrollable breathing of water, or cold incapacitation, not, as commonly believed, from hypothermia, and almost all of those in the water died of cardiac arrest or other bodily reactions to freezing water. Within 15 to 30 minutes, only 5 of them were helped into the lifeboats, though the lifeboats had room for almost 500 more people. Distress signals were sent by wireless, rockets, and lamp, but none of the ships that responded was near enough to reach Titanic before she sank. A radio operator on board the Birma, for instance, estimated that it would be 6 a.m. before the liner could arrive at the scene. Meanwhile, the SS Californian, which was the last to have been in contact before the collision, saw Titanic's flares but failed to assist. Around 4 a.m., RMS Carpathia arrived on the scene in response to Titanic's earlier distress calls. About 710 people survived the disaster and were conveyed by Carpathia to New York, Titanic's original destination, while at least 1,500 people lost their lives. Carpathia's captain described the place as an ice field that had included 20 large bergs measuring up to 200 feet, 61 meters, high and numerous smaller bergs, as well as ice floes and debris from Titanic. Passengers described being in the middle of a vast white plain of ice, studded with icebergs. Role of the SS Californian. While investigation. One of the most controversial issues examined by the inquiries was the role played by SS Californian, which had been only a few miles from Titanic but had not picked up her distress calls or responded to her signal rockets. Californian had warned Titanic by radio of the pack ice. That was the reason Californian had stopped for the night but was rebuked by Titanic's senior wireless operator, Jack Phillips. Testimony before the British inquiry revealed that at 10:10 p.m., Californian observed the lights of a ship to the south. It was later agreed between Captain Stanley Lord and Third Officer C.V. Groves, who had relieved Lord of duty at 11:10 p.m., that this was a passenger liner. At 11:50 p.m., the officer had watched that ship's lights flash out, as if she had shut down or turned sharply, and that the port light was now visible. Morse light signals to the ship, upon Lord's order, were made between 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m., but were not acknowledged. If Titanic was as far from the Californian as Lord claimed, then he knew, or should have known, that Morse signals would not be visible. A reasonable and prudent course of action would have been to awaken the wireless operator and to instruct him to attempt to contact Titanic by that method. Had Lord done so, it is possible he could have reached Titanic in time to save additional lives. Captain Lord had gone to the chartroom at 11 p.m. to spend the night. However, Second Officer Herbert Stone, now on duty, notified Lord at 1:10 a.m. that the ship had fired 5 rockets. Lord wanted to know if they were company signals, that is, colored flares used for identification. Stone said that he did not know and that the rockets were all white. Captain Lord instructed the crew to continue to signal the other vessel with the Morse lamp, and went back to sleep. 3 more rockets were observed at 1:50 a.m. and Stone noted that the ship looked strange in the water, as if she were listing. At 2:15 a.m., Lord was notified that the ship could no longer be seen. Lord asked again if the lights had had any colors in them, and he was informed that they were all white. Californian eventually responded. At around 5:30 a.m., Chief Officer George Stewart awakened wireless operator Cyril Firmstone Evans, informed him that rockets had been seen during the night, and asked that he try to communicate with any ship. He got news of Titanic's loss. Captain Lord was notified, and the ship set out to render assistance. She arrived well after Carpathia had already picked up all the survivors. The inquiries found that the ship seen by Californian was in fact Titanic, and that it would have been possible for Californian to come to her rescue. Therefore, Captain Lord had acted improperly in failing to do so. Wreck. Titanic was long thought to have sunk in one piece, and over the years, many schemes were put forward for raising the wreck. None came to fruition. The fundamental problem was the sheer difficulty of finding and reaching a wreck that lies over 12,000 feet, 3,700 meters, below the surface, in a location where the water pressure is over 6,500 pounds per square inch, 450 bars. A number of expeditions were mounted to find Titanic, but it was not until the 1st of September 1985 that a Franco-American expedition led by Jean-Louis Michel and Robert Ballard succeeded. The team discovered that Titanic had in fact split apart, probably near or at the surface, before sinking to the seabed. The separated bow and stern sections lie about a third of a mile, 0.6 kilometers, apart in Titanic Canyon off the coast of Newfoundland. They are located 13.2 miles, 21.2 kilometers, from the inaccurate coordinates given by Titanic's radio operators on the night of her sinking, and approximately 715 miles, 1,151 kilometers, from Halifax, and 1,250 miles, 2,012 kilometers, from New York. Both sections struck the seabed at considerable speed, causing the bow to crumple and the stern to collapse entirely. The bow is by far the more intact section and still contains some surprisingly intact interiors. In contrast, the stern is completely wrecked, its decks have pancaked down on top of each other, and much of the hull plating was torn off and lies scattered across the seafloor. The much greater level of damage to the stern is probably due to structural damage incurred during the sinking. Thus weakened, the remainder of the stern was flattened by the impact with the seabed. The two sections are surrounded by a debris field measuring approximately 5 by 3 miles, 8.0 kilometers, 4.8 kilometers. It contains hundreds of thousands of items, such as pieces of the ship, furniture, dinnerware and personal items, which fell from the ship as she sank or were ejected when the bow and stern impacted on the sea floor. The debris field was also the last resting place of a number of Titanic's victims. Most of the bodies and clothes were consumed by sea creatures and bacteria, leaving pairs of shoes and boots, which have proved to be inedible, as the only sign that bodies once lay there. Since its initial discovery, the wreck of Titanic has been revisited on numerous occasions by explorers, scientists, filmmakers, tourists and salvagers, who have recovered thousands of items from the debris field for conservation and public display. The ship's condition has deteriorated significantly over the years, particularly from accidental damage by submersibles, but mostly because of an accelerating rate of growth of iron-eating bacteria on the hull. In 2006, it was estimated that within 50 years the hull and structure of Titanic would eventually collapse entirely, leaving only the more durable interior fittings of the ship intermingled with a pile of rust on the seafloor. Many artifacts from Titanic have been recovered from the seabed by RMS Titanic Inc., which exhibits them in touring exhibitions around the world and in a permanent exhibition at the Luxor Las Vegas Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada. A number of other museums exhibit artifacts either donated by survivors or retrieved from the floating bodies of victims of the disaster. On the 16th of April 2012, the day after the 100th anniversary of the sinking, photos were released showing possible human remains resting on the ocean floor. The photos, taken by Robert Ballard during an expedition led by NOAA in 2004, show a boot in a coat close to Titanic's stern, which experts called compelling evidence that it is the spot where somebody came to rest, and that human remains could be buried in the sediment beneath them. The wreck of the Titanic falls under the scope of the 2001 UNESCO Convention on the Protection of the Underwater Cultural Heritage. This means that all states party to the convention will prohibit the pillaging, commercial exploitation, sale and dispersion of the wreck and its artifacts. Because of the location of the wreck in international waters and the lack of any exclusive jurisdiction over the wreckage area, the convention provides a state cooperation system, by which states inform each other of any potential activity concerning ancient shipwreck sites, like the Titanic, and cooperate to prevent unscientific or unethical interventions. Submersible dives in 2019 have found further deterioration of the wreck, including loss of the captain's bathtub. Between the 29th of July and the 4th of August 2019, a two-person submersible vehicle that was conducting research and filming a documentary crashed into the shipwreck. EVIOS Expeditions executed the sub-dives. It reported that the strong currents pushed the sub into the wreck, leaving a red rust stain on the side of the sub. The report did not mention if the Titanic sustained any damage.